Hi, Muffin.
Hey, John, how are you?
Good. I got my fingers crossed that my internet connection is going to keep working. I'm in a different location tonight.
Gotcha. Well, it's interesting. Nobody else has signed on yet. I'm sure Sarah will be on soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's still 5 up. I got on early just to make sure it's working.
Yeah. I always try to sign on a little bit ahead for that same reason, just to make sure.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi Muffin, how you doing?
I'm well. How was your trip, Sarah?
It was fantastic.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Your long-awaited trip.
Right. Now I'm back to reality again.
Yeah, that's the hardest part of trips.
Right, you gotta come home.
Yeah.
We saw all bunches of little babies, like month-old lions,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
about the size of my cat.
Oh, real babies. Wow.
Yeah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi Dean, how you doing?
Okay, welcome back.
Thanks.
Were you really in Africa?
Yeah, Tanzania.
Wow,
Yeah,
must have been quite an adventure.
it was, and it was, the places we stayed were only 1/3 filled. There were not very many vehicles around, so they're in dire straits there.
Oh, wow.
It was only the third drive for the safari drivers of the year, and normally they're back to back to back. You know, so
Yeah, and it's how they make their livelihood. So they really are struggling.
85% of their income is on tips.
Wow.
No people, no tips.
Yeah, right, right.
Good evening.
Hi, John. How
Hi,
you
John.
doing?
Good. How are things?
Good.
Great.
There I am.
I was pointing up at the ceiling, wondered why I couldn't see myself.
I had to turn on the video.
Yeah.
What minutes were we trying to get to toward the end of the meeting? It's on the agenda.
There were no minutes. Gail
Okay,
Gail was unable to get any minutes to us.
okay.
Yeah, so you're not missing anything. I haven't heard from very many members of the FinCom, so I'm hoping people are coming.
It'd be a quiet
Has it been
night.
a while since you've met?
Yeah, it was
It's the town meeting.
August.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And there hasn't been any approval of in-person meetings yet, right?
Oh, we did in-person meetings for the Zoning Board of Appeals in the summer.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
we did. My board was very adamant. We didn't do it in September because I didn't want potential exposure. And this month we're not doing it because we're afraid there's going to be too many people.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think they're still in town hall working on the hybrid piece anyway.
Yeah, it's not close. They
Right.
can't get the equipment in. So,
Right.
yeah, so the 40B is going to have to be via Zoom, the first meeting. And our regular ZBA meeting the next night, we have two rather contentious applications, so we expect people to be there.
Mm.
I think I responded that I was gonna attend tonight when I got your email. Has anybody else?
Mike Pratt responded that he wouldn't be able to make it. I see Mark Weld is on.
Oh.
So Mark got it. It looks like Gail is on. It was on.
All right.
Yeah, Gail's on, yeah.
I'm here.
Hi, Gail. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Feeling strong?
Yep.
Good.
We have Dean and myself on. Mike Pratt said he couldn't make it. I haven't heard from Maury or Andy.
Wow.
But I think I would have heard, there's Greg. I think I would have heard if they weren't coming. I know there was a harbor advisory meeting at 5:30 that Maury would have been at.
Yeah, and you need to use the link from your agenda, not the link that's attached to the posting. So that might have tripped anybody up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the link that's attached to the posting takes it to the Historic District Commission tomorrow night.
Jeez.
And click your agenda, and I could do it from the link on the agenda.
Okay.
Is that a fatal flaw? That the posted link isn't?
No, I don't think so, Mark, because it's on the agenda too. So, I mean, it happened a couple times early on. But people are able to get to it if they click on just the agenda.
I don't know how it gets into the calendar.
Yeah.
Right, I used the link from the meeting posting that you emailed me. That you
Good.
called the agenda, so it worked
Right.
there. But
Right.
I see Maury's on.
Hello,
Hi, Maury.
Mark,
good to see you all.
So with Dean, Mark, Maury, and myself, we do have a quorum. We're missing Peter Twining, who I didn't hear from, and we're missing Andy, who I didn't hear from. But it's 7:02. So let's go ahead and get started. I will call the Thursday, Wednesday. Oh, I see what the problem is. The Wednesday, October 13th Finance Committee meeting to order. The agenda said Thursday, not Wednesday. That's why there's confusion.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah, my screw up. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to discuss various warrant articles and also kind of discuss the 2023 budget priorities and process. We're going to start with the Manchester what is it? The Manchester Housing Authority Manchester Affordable Housing Trust petition supported by the Board of Selectmen regarding the, it's a non-binding endorsement of the development plan advanced by the Manchester Housing Authority and Manchester Affordable Housing Trust that includes the town-owned site on Pleasant Street, where the site's owned by the Housing Authority, and also asks that the land be transferred with a limited reduced price less than market value is what's anticipated. When the two boards started this process, it was in either 2018 or 2019, where they put out for an RFP for the Manchester Housing Authority sites. They received 0 responses. So they hired a consultant and they threw in the DPW as a possible site that would perhaps make it financially feasible. And the consultant came back with a concept design, including the DPW site. So I asked John Feuerbach, who's the chairperson of the Affordable Housing Trust, to just kind of give a brief overview of the project. We also have Martha Driscoll and Chris Olney here from the Affordable Housing Trust. So thought John could give a brief overview, and then people could ask questions because they're looking, this is a financial article. So FinCom will need to take a stand.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sarah. And we can't forget Muffin here. She's a member of the Affordable Housing Trust liaison to the Board of Selectmen. Hi, everyone. John Feuerbach, chair of the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust. I speak on behalf of Chris and Muffin here and others who are committee members, but also the Manchester Housing Authority. I know Gretchen Wood is a member of the Affordable Housing Trust coming from the Housing Authority, and she might be here tonight. But anyway, this is really just an opportunity to talk about the 2 warrant articles that will be at town meeting in November. And I think Sarah gave a very good brief summary. I just want to provide a little bit more background. The warrant articles and our request for a non-binding, basically taking the temperature to town, evolves out of probably the last 2 or 3 years of working with the Housing Authority. Sarah correctly mentioned that we put out a request for proposal to try to solicit a development partner to assess the feasibility of not just new construction, but rehabbing the Newport, the Plains and Loading Place, but also Pleasant Street. We didn't get any responses. So what we did was we solicited a development consultant under contract and looked at all the sites and came back with a proof of concept plan that demonstrates that the construction of units at Newport, Plains and Loading Place, in addition to Pleasant Street, it's feasible. Development consultant looked at schematic site plans and design guidance. She checked into zoning and entitlement requirements, did a look at current septic bylaws, requirements and sewer. And then she pivoted, and with that information, she developed some project financing assumptions. She looked at development and operating budgets, and then she also did a subsidy resourcing roadmap for us. And the end product, which the Affordable Housing Trust and Housing Authority we've done our best to engage folks. We've used the Cricket to get the word out. The plans are in the Affordable Housing Trust link on the town website. But the plan that demonstrates that there's a possibility that that things are feasible. A couple of things we learned. There has to be a 1-for-1 match. Any new construction has to match the number of units at the Public Housing Authority sites. So that was very, very important. But we've received strong support from the town to date. Back in August, I made a presentation to the Board of Selectmen, and we said, we got support for a non-binding, hi Gretchen, a non-binding article that seeks to get town support for the development plan that we have advanced and resulted in the proof of concept for Newport, for the Plains loading place in Pleasant Street. And then furthermore, we got support from the Board of Selectmen to, again, have a non-binding article that seeks town support for foregoing whether it's a deed price or a ground lease fee to be determined, in essence, reducing the cost of acquisition to reduce the cost of development to enhance the opportunity for either maximizing affordable units on the Pleasant Street site or else passing off some savings and perhaps some cash flow if there's a connection between the Pleasant Street development and the work that's going on the Manchester Housing Authority sites. Perhaps some revenue can be used from Pleasant Street to help support raising private debt, to support tax credit financing and debt on those properties. So we got the support from the Board of Selectmen, and the two warrant articles, I think are really pretty straightforward, but I think they're important because while non-binding, the Housing Authority and the Affordable Housing Trust plan to move forward as quickly as possible on a request for proposal for development services. And what we would like to do, and we think it'd be important to do, is indicate that at such and such town meeting, while non-binding, the town voted to support A and B. We think that'll be a very important background information for any possible development partner who might be asking, has the town been alerted to this plan? Is the town aware of it? What is the town's degree of support for this? So while we will outline all of the public outreach and meetings we've had in the request for proposal, we'd certainly like to furthermore indicate through a non-binding vote that the town is supportive of not just the plan itself, but the idea of foregoing some revenue to promote community affordable housing at Pleasant Street, and also to support the development, the rehabilitation of the Plains, Newport, and loading place. So we're here for questions, and ultimately, Sarah and board members, we would seek the Board of Selectmen support on this so that at the town meeting, we could say that not only is the warrant article supported by the Board of Selectmen, Affordable Housing Trust, and the Manchester Housing Authority, but we can say it's been presented to the Board of Selectmen and they considered it and they voted in affirmative.
And the Finance Committee.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
Yeah, Board of Selectmen.
Finance Committee.
And I think the other thing, I don't know if people are aware of, but the Manchester Housing Authority properties are very low income properties where the rents are only 30% of people's income, and the state is not coming forward with money for capital improvements unless things are in a very bad shape. So the hope was to create more units at that very low end of the market, not at this 80% of AMI, that 40B stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally. And I see Gretchen leaning in. I don't know if that's her indication that she'd like to opine about the condition of the Manchester Housing Authority units, or just the difficulties in getting money to support the operations.
Yeah, and the state is very forthcoming about this. It's not like they're saying, oh yeah, well, there's going to be money down the pipeline. They've said there is not going to be money in the future. This is, they're very anxious to have us try to figure out some other pipeline to maybe upgrade the existing facilities a little bit. And certainly I think from the master plan, we know that there are a lot of people aging in this town who would like to be able to downsize and move someplace. And the newer units, which would have an elevator, we have 2-floor units now, but there's no elevators. They're certainly not great for seniors. But the whole thing is that we're not going to be having the amount of money needed from the state.
Yeah, and as I indicated, while we'll be putting out an RFP for developer services, I think it's fair to say that there will be refinement of this proof of concept plan. There'll be further engagement with residents and town boards, but ultimately the development will be, the developer applicant will be pursuing State Department of Housing and Community Development finance funds. And with that in mind, our consultant, who has probably worked with DHCD for probably as long as I've been working with them, probably close to 30 years. We've had favorable meetings and calls with both the Office of Public Housing that will help us on the Public Housing Authority funding side, but also with New Production, the entity that administers the tax credits and puts a soft debt, state money debt, whether it's, there's a variety of sources. So that's something that would be considered in addition to some forms of low-income housing tax credit financing and permanent debt. But just coming, I'm sorry, just my last one, but just coming back to that second item of the warrant where it's a non-binding, seeking to reduce or eliminate the cost of acquisition. Anything that we can do to reduce the development costs will help a development partner move forward with perhaps more community affordable housing units on that site, or can generate some revenue to help the work on the Public Housing Authority sites. And through direct experience, DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, when they look at proposals from towns, they're looking what type of contribution is a town doing, and in many cases you'll see town writing down the cost of land to a nominal amount to promote affordable housing, and then furthermore there'll be a variety of funding sources that a town could bring or a city would bring. In our case here, we'd have, I believe the Affordable Housing Trust would be open to spreading our financing to support a project. And we also have our local allocation of home funds. Sorry to run on there.
Okay, should we, I'll open it up to questions from the board.
Yeah, I was just curious, John, this is super helpful. You mentioned Loading Place Road, Newport and the Plains, and then also the DPW site. And could you just kind of explain, are they all being worked on together? Are these two separate projects, or is one linked to the other? And then I guess the other question down the road is if there's any info on what you think the value of the DPW site is monetarily, like if there's been any estimates on that. But
Hey, Maury, the second question, we haven't, I don't believe our consultant has given us any indication of that other than maybe looking at assessing, but as you know, the town would have to, and Greg's here who can help out as well. I'm assuming you get an appraisal and have that as the basis for determining value. Regarding your first question, the request for proposal will include 4 sites, and we would, through the vetting of applicants, we would expect to work with one applicant. It'll be interesting to see whether or not the new construction elements on the Plains, Loading Place, and Newport could be combined with an entity on Pleasant. I don't, and Chris, help me out here. I don't think it necessarily has to be that way. They could be I think they could be separate entities. It could be the same developer, but it could be a separate entity. But I do know that the proof of concept plan was talked about approximately 30 units. Again, that'll be worked out when we have an applicant. But to the extent that we could reduce the purchase price and pass on some savings to reduce the cost of development, that will certainly help the development costs at Pleasant. And one of the things that was introduced in the proof of concept plan is perhaps there could be some relationship between the Pleasant Street and the MHA properties where if, for example, some cash flow is generated from Pleasant Street, it could be used to monetize or to support some private debt that would help out on that work. I'm sorry if I can't give you any more specifics. I think we'll learn more once we put out the request for proposal and we see the nature of the responses.
So one other question. I know we talked about this maybe a year ago, that I can't remember if Newport Park and the Plains and are owned by the town. And there was some talk about maybe having a developer or somebody come in and have a multi-year lease and then renovate those properties. Is that kind of
They're owned by the
illogical?
state. They're owned by the
Okay.
state.
Got it.
And there's complicated means where we might be able to split off a part of the property that currently doesn't have buildings on it. It's very complicated.
That's
That's
what
what
we'd have to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I believe you're right, Sarah. Not only is a one-to-one match, but we'd have to spin off and create a new entity for the new construction activities.
And we would expect the developer to help finalize that based on what's financially feasible.
And that would be one of the many development tasks that would be the responsibility of the applicant.
John, I had a question. I think I heard that the target of the proposed DPW site would be, lower income, so not necessarily, that 80% AMI figure that something like the SLB project is targeting. But does this, and so I presume it's separate, and the intent is to pursue this regardless of what would happen with the SLB project, and potentially regardless of what happens with the Elm Street project?
Oh, definitely, definitely. It seems like we've had a lot of white noise, right, recently with the SLV, but the work that MHA and the Affordable Housing Trust actually predates the SLV. It just so happens now it's like a confluence, and people perhaps are taking more notice to the work we're doing, maybe because they realize, boy, the town's under its 10%, man, we gotta ramp up. What are reasonable opportunities to fulfill that? And I think people are seeing the work that we're doing and the plan that's been advanced as a reasonable plan.
And Andy, I think the expectation is that certainly a portion of the dwellings on Pleasant Street would be market rate to give the adequate cash flow to cover the MHA sites, which are much lower income. So those would not necessarily be at the same price as the current state properties.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I had a question.
Dean?
Would the new units also be owned by the state that we're proposing, similar to the Plains and Newport Park?
No,
Yeah,
that's not the expectation.
I believe we're going to have to set up a separate entity who will be wholly like a single purpose entity unrelated to the Manchester Housing Authority. And I believe that will be a freestanding development. I think we're talking about, at least we've got support for similar population that we would serve. But I don't believe it has to necessarily be tied together.
I don't believe the state wants any more state-owned properties. So they want a private developer to develop them and help them get out of their mess.
Okay, and
Except-
are there
except-
any other sites being considered? Because I'm concerned about the timeline. We have to afford a new DPW site, station before any of this can happen, which may take, 5 to 10 years.
I think that it doesn't have to be the DPW site. It
Right.
could be another similar site that could support similar number of buildings. I don't think this development with the MHA is going to be at lightning fast speed.
Right.
So they're not gonna be looking to start, soon. So I think that there's the challenge is we don't have a lot of sites available for development.
Right.
And the DPW is in town and appropriate for residential dwellings.
And I mean, the other thing that we've sort of been buoyed by, I hate to use that small town, Manchester by the Sea boating community, buoyed by, is the results of the master planning process that many meetings indicated ultimately support for some form of community housing on that public work site. Notwithstanding your point about the complications of changing the use, and in our couple of meetings with the Board of Selectmen, they were quite frank about they had to figure out how they're going to work that. But ultimately, back in August, they did vote to support these two warrant articles that we're talking about.
Okay, Mark, well, did you have any questions?
One, I guess, which would be, John, as part of your consultant's scope of project, did they do a pro forma about, hey, this is what we can fit in there and show returns to see if this, how much incentive giving them the land would be versus selling it to them and, that kind of thing. So, because the finance committee on the SLV project, we did our own pro forma, which was very informative in that it demonstrated that the SLV pro forma was not possible. It couldn't be built for that amount of money.
We do have a pro forma, right, John?
Yeah,
We
I was gonna
certainly
say,
can share it with you,
and
Mark.
actually, it's in a great format where you can do multiple what-if scenarios. You could actually find it, Mark, on the Affordable Housing Trust website. In fact, I was just scrolling earlier today and I saw that. But it was, when you say it was a proof of concept, she ran assumed development costs. She ran assumed operating budgets, so revenue and operating costs. And then she made assumptions, and in an operating budget, she made assumptions on affordability and rent coming in. And then on that basis, she then ran debt modeling, she ran some tax credit assumptions and some state source assumptions. So yes.
And it appeared that the land needed to be transferred at a discount in order for it to be financially feasible.
Yeah, in fact, I was looking at the report from the study on page 11. She says 30 units is only financially feasible if the town is able to donate, and she put it in quotations, donate the property at no cost. And she says, well, what the town would have to be consider then, if it's serious about this, is more units, greater density. But then that becomes a conversation that all of us we have to engage in with residents and townspeople. But she did say clearly that to the extent the town could write down and reduce the land costs, it would reduce the stress on the number of units and the feasibility.
And under that base model, we'll call it, of 30 units, what was the characteristics of those 30 units? How many are affordable versus how many market?
Oh,
Go ahead, Sarah.
We had to have, so for the rehabbing of the MHA sites, we had to have an equal number of affordable to match those, which was, I think, about 38. And I think DPW site was expected to be market rate.
So it's the land will subsidize a market rate development on the Pleasant Street site in order to to subsidize the rehabilitation of the other MHA sites.
Correct.
That's
Yes.
the plan.
If we
Yeah.
build 30 units, we're only going to be able to rehab 30 units of the Plains or Newport?
My reading and my work with
Total.
the consultant is that it would be woven into the overall housing authority plan, so that would help finance
The,
what she was running at approximately 40,000 per unit rehab costs of the
but John, the total units were more than 30 total.
total of what?
There were more units than 30 total added because you were adding some at each of the sites.
Oh, definitely.
then
No,
you
I'm
had
sorry.
at
Yeah,
DPW.
the Pleasant Street, she was saying up to 30, but Loading Place, we were looking at 12. It would be 6 attached to families. Again, this is something that'll be refined. The Plains, she was looking at approximately 26, a combination of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. Newport, I believe it was like 18 to 24. So all told, when you added up the Pleasant, which is 30, we were in a neighborhood of 85 to 90, which gets you to that 1-to-1 match that we needed to meet.
85 to 90 affordable units, or 85 to 90 total units of how many are affordable?
85 to 90 total units. The affordability, certainly with respect to Pleasant, would have to be determined. I would say we're probably looking at least 75% affordable. Again, I hate to be a little cagey, but I think this will be refined once we put out the RFP and we select a developer, and then they do the budgetary, the development due diligence.
I mean, the number she did was assuming that all of the units added to the Plains, Newport Park, and Loading Place Road would be affordable, but not necessarily the units on the DPW side.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I'll look at the pro forma. I apologize,
Okay.
I haven't seen it yet, so, but I would suggest, Madam Chairman, that we do perhaps a similar exercise, whether we do it now or in the future, and just use our resources to perhaps, just make comments on the pro forma, that's all.
Okay, that sounds
I
good.
guess two things that I just want to
Wait a minute, John.
I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry. I need to go. This is too much back and forth. I need to call on people who have their hands raised. Okay, thank you. Chris Olin.
So I just have a couple of things to say. First, we have to go back and start thinking about preserving the affordable units that are there and owned by the Housing Authority now. And this scheme has to start with keeping those seniors there living in a safe and well-managed property. The second thing I wanted to say is that we had a question at one of the meetings from a very intelligent community member who said, wait a minute, if you're going to have all of market rate units on Pleasant Street, why would you be giving them the land? And the answer to that is, well, we wouldn't be. This is going to be part of a bigger deal where the amount of the price of the land is going to be determined by how much it costs to maintain the affordability of those public housing authority units. And the third thing I want to say is that I don't think we're talking about a sale of the Pleasant Street land. I think this will be a long-term lease to a developer so that the town will, over the long run, have control over that land way into the future. So it wouldn't be a sale, it would be a long-term lease. That's it for now.
Thank you, Chris. Mary Foley.
Thanks, Sarah. I just have 3 quick questions to hopefully clarify. The first question being, John, you talked about different parcels of land having different entities. So in the long run, for the state to rehab the state units and then to build new units, going forward, who maintains them since the state has said they don't have the money? Is all that revenue from the market rate units going to pay for maintenance going forward?
Yes. That would be the expectation.
Yeah, and the
Okay.
private entity, the private developer with the private management company would be responsible for the upkeep.
So the private entity is both state housing and private housing. Is
They
that
would,
correct?
the expectation, yeah, the expectation is that the cash flow from the non-housing authority units would cover ongoing maintenance of the housing authority units. And there obviously has to be a conversation with the state and an
So,
attempt to
and
get
then,
money from the state.
yeah, because then the state would not have any control over the market rate units or the other units, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then I just wanted to clarify, because I know there's been a lot of like community affordable housing, and this is what Manchester residents need. These units actually go into a state lottery, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last one, which I think you might have already
I
answered.
I just want to clarify, there could be a local preference.
But only first time round,
I'm sorry?
only first time round, only the initial,
Yeah.
The initial lottery, yeah.
yeah.
And I think you answered this, but so the units needed at the DPW site or some other site starts at 30 if the land is for free and then goes up from there. Is that correct?
What the proof of concept report indicated was based on their analysis, 30 seemed like a reasonable amount, but the assumption was there would be some contribution of the land to support the development costs. If that were not to happen, and there would be development pressures. So one way the development community addresses that is by increasing the number of units to gain more revenue.
So I lied. I have one more quick question. So is the article going to town voters? Is it going to state the number of units?
No, this is just a non-binding
Yeah, the
regarding the
warrant is, I
DP.
believe it's
Excuse
been
me, John.
cited. There's no reference to numbers or so. I mean, it's just non-binding. As we mentioned in the beginning, it's just to, well, I don't need to restate it again.
Yeah, Mary, it's, the warrant article is merely a non-binding article to see if the town supports the possibility of transferring the DPW site to a private developer. In order for us to be able to go out with an RFP to see if there's a feasible project. But the town would vote on an actual transfer, a long-term release of the property at a future town meeting when the components of the development were detailed and complete. This is merely a concept at this point.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Sheila Hill. Sheila?
He needs to unmute.
Sorry, I did.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So Sheila Hill, 2 Running Ridge Road. A quick question about the value or the assumed value of the DPW piece, because it's an important piece of the puzzle here. At what point in the process will you be doing soil testing of that property? I would imagine over the years, there's a significant amount of contamination there. If it's remediable, it will be costly perhaps, and that just seems like something needs to be factored in. So I wondered before we.
There were some initial borings done by a prior consultant. And the feeling was that it was not badly polluted, but that's obviously something a developer would have to determine.
I was going to say the same thing, Sarah.
Yeah, so that you would let the developer do that piece, and then that would lead to what the property was really worth. Once the
Right.
once you've accepted a given RFP from a given developer.
Right, there's going to be, until a developer's chosen, There's not going to be any details. And so we don't really know how they would value the property and how much they would be willing to pay for it.
Okay, that seems like a risk, but there you go. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sarah, can I ask a question?
You can, Maury.
I know a lot of this is predicated on having a place for the DPW to go, because it's currently sitting in a place that theoretically we'd like to, in a non-binding way, allocate towards something else. I know, Craig, we've talked in the past about the Pine Street dump site. We've talked about School Street. Do you have some thoughts there? Because obviously moving one piece infers some cost in another, and how does that all look?
So we do have capital money in this current fiscal year to do some preliminary design work, and we are focusing on this School Street, the old compost site, as the preferred location. So that's just getting underway. So I don't have a lot of detail on that. We did a few years ago. We did again sort of conceptual layouts on different town parcels, and the DPW. The School Street site looked like a very feasible location for the DPW.
Do we have some rough order magnitude numbers of what it would take to prep that site and build a facility on it?
Well, so this analysis will help us develop those numbers. You know, you're probably north of 10 million.
Great, thank you.
Sarah?
Yes, Steve.
I just wanted to add, I would recommend that this study include whether it would be cheaper to build on other sites, because it seems like the Pine Street site would be a lot less expensive because it's flat and it's right there with a wide street. But before we put all our eggs into a basket, we might want to look at a site before we dig in deep.
A site for what?
The DPW.
Well, I think, again, this is merely a non-binding warrant article, which is seeing if the town would support it. It doesn't mean that it can't change with time. But without having some type of property available to be part of this project, we won't get any responses to an RFP, because the prior developers said it wasn't feasible without more land.
Well, the School Street site would be a good site for assisted living. It's right by the medical complex, and we could build it right now without dealing with the DPW pressuring to move it. Just as an example of what can be done.
Okay,
But
so
I
you
know,
we're making this too complicated, I think. And I think that we need to do some due diligence on the pro forma, and we're going to need to meet again before town meeting, because we're going to need to make a recommendation regarding this warrant article. So time is ticking, right?
I would say, Sarah, I know I've asked a lot. I think we all have different feelings about how things should happen in town, but our role on this committee is basically to look at the world through the lens of finance and numbers. And there are very few numbers and very few financial issues available right now tonight on this, or at least we haven't done our homework. And I would suggest we try to do a little bit of that quickly and get a broad brushstroke sense of, okay, if we move DPW, and what's the town kind of in a non-binding way looking to commit to this project, just so we don't go into it going, oh, are we looking at 2 million? Are we looking at 40 million?
Yep.
And then from there, we can all establish our own comfort level to support it. So
Okay. I will make sure that Mark gets the pro forma, and we can try to work on this in the next couple of weeks to come up with some type of,
If it's on the website, I'm happy to get it myself, Sarah.
okay, okay.
And Sarah, I would venture to say, if needed, our consultant would be available for a short talk with someone from the FinCom if that was desired.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think we're going beyond just
I-
this project where you have concerns about the availability of the DPW sites.
I hear you.
Site and what the overall costs are to the town. And so I think we need to, is it possible, Greg, to get some type of sense of what it would cost to rebuild the DPW on Pleasant Street versus on School Street? Broad brush numbers?
Well, we can certainly try.
Okay, because that's what we're really talking. You're saying we need to rebuild the DPW site, right?
Regardless of where it's located, DPW needs a new facility.
Okay,
Whether we rehab the existing one or tear it down and build new there or someplace else, but something needs to be done. It's our most tired facility, for sure.
okay. So we'll move on to looking at the remainder of the warrant articles. Now, the original list I received, Greg, indicated that there was a citizens petition for a public safety dispatch, but on this warrant you gave us, I don't see that. Is that off the docket?
We have not received any such petition. So the deadline is this Saturday for that.
Okay,
I'm not aware of that being circulated at this point.
okay. So we will not discuss public safety dispatch tonight then, since we're trying to do it based on warrant articles. So the first warrant article is one that was on the town warrant last June and had to be passed over because planning board hadn't given an opinion, and that's with respect to the transfer of land between, or easements between Hamilton and Manchester out by Gravelly Pond and Tobacco Road. I believe that in June, we took no position on that, right?
Correct.
So is that what the board wants to do again? Because it's not really, doesn't really have financial implications.
I would say yes.
Yeah, I would agree unless there's something else that's cropped up that changes our view on it.
Is this the same, Greg, as it was last June?
Yes, it's the exact same wording.
Then I will take a motion that the finance committee takes no position on Article 1 regarding the Tobacco Road land swap between Hamilton and Manchester.
So moved.
Andy moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dean seconds. Any discussion? I will.
At the town meeting, wasn't this something that the planning board found it was in their jurisdiction? Isn't that what was discussed at the town meeting?
Well, the planning board had to do a review of the article and they hadn't done it.
Okay.
So it couldn't be voted on at town meeting.
Okay.
And they've since done it, I believe. So I'll take a roll call
Can I just
vote.
ask one question? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Greg, I know we've always had this issue with the pumping facility being on Hamilton land. Is there any way in this that we can shore up that differently? I think we talked about this before, but I don't remember where all that went. And maybe there's no way to do anything there.
I'm sorry, Maury, when you say
So isn't our
pumping station,
isn't our pumping station or our water treatment facility actually on Hamilton land?
so
Yes.
we own the land, but it's in Hamilton.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
So we own the land that the treatment plant sits on, but
Got
it
it.
isn't Hamilton proper.
so we pay
Okay.
taxes, real estate
So we,
taxes.
we pay real estate taxes. to
Ah, got
Hamilton.
it. Okay.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And what the article for the road is doing is there are 2 easements that would be discontinued. And that land reverts back to us and encumbered by the same conservation easement that the whole parcel has. And then a new easement is created for this relocated road that's further away from Gravelly Pond.
Okay.
So that's what's happening in the article.
Great. Thank you.
So we're ready to take a vote, or are there more questions? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Dean,
Or, yes. But we don't
Lori?
need to consider.
right, okay, Maury,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and Sarah votes yes. Okay, then we have the Parks and Rec request for money to design the burn dump into a practice field to use while Sweeney Park is being reconstructed. Can you speak to that a little bit, Greg?
Sure. So Park and Rec had developed a master plan of field needs and possible locations for new fields and improving existing fields. And the burn dump on Pine Street was identified as a potential site for a practice field. It's not large enough to hold a regulation soccer field, for example, but it could house a smaller size soccer field, multi-purpose field that could be used for games from the smaller children, and also as a practice field for any age. And as they were advancing the plans for Sweeney Park, realized that if Sweeney Park is going to be renovated, it'll be offline, obviously, for a couple of seasons. And so it would be critical to have some substitute for that in the short term, but longer term, there are needs for more field space. So with Sweeney getting more attention and the dollars voted for doing the design work on Sweeney, which we have in this current capital budget, the thought was we need to speed up the work for the new field at the old burn dump in order to provide an alternative when Sweeney is out of commission. And so the request is for funds to do the design of a new field at the old burn dump and do cost estimates so that at the spring annual town meeting, funds could be allocated for construction of the new practice field at the old burn dump. So this is a bit of a speed up, if you will, of the plans in order to coincide with the needs that will be coming down the pike with Sweeney offline.
As I recall, we expected Sweeney to be about 1.5 million.
Yes.
Now we're looking for 100,000 to design this practice field. And how much are we expecting the practice field to cost?
I don't have an exact figure, but I would expect it to be in, $750,000. in that range.
And did CPC consider funding any of this?
They
There's
certainly,
no application.
they would certainly consider funding the construction cost. It was, the Park and Rec felt it would be better to do design work and then come to the CPC with a fully designed project.
But I thought CPC paid for part of the design for Sweeney Park. It was 50-50, I thought. Am I wrong?
No, you're right.
Dean?
Yeah, I've long supported need for another field. Regardless of Sweeney, I think we're short a field in town. But I'm curious what other sites were in the mix.
Oh, that's the problem. There aren't other sites that are viable. There was some preliminary look at lands around the treatment plant, the water treatment plant. A lot of wetlands in there, and it's not in town, so it was not it's not an ideal location. The DPW site on Pleasant Street was another location that has been looked at. So we don't have a lot of town-owned land that would accommodate new fields.
Very smart.
Winthrop Field, is that off of Jersey Lane, that corner of Winthrop Field? Wasn't there discussion about putting a field in there at some point?
Yeah, good luck. There'd be extreme neighborhood opposition, if not townwide opposition to that, is what I'm told.
Yep.
So that is restricted to educational use. You can make an argument that all fields are educational. So it might fit under the deed restriction of that land, but others have argued otherwise.
Sarah, could I?
Yes, go ahead.
I apologize. I'm having a problem with the video part of my computer, but what this sounds like now is that when we approved the design money for Sweeney Park, we were really approving two fields, not one. And you mentioned that next spring would be the approval for the burn dump, but we haven't approved Sweeney Park yet, the capital required for that. So I'm just a little concerned about the sequencing here and the auspices under which, how we've gone forward here. Because we're not talking about even $1.5 million was a lot of capital at the outset of this discussion. Now we're talking about probably 2.5, with design fees and all that. I just don't know if the town is, going to view that as credible. Like, okay, we need an interim field, but that'll grow into a permanent field.
It just, I don't understand why it had to come before us now, and why it couldn't be a spring article. We don't normally deal with financial items in the fall.
Again, it was because of the desire to get that practice field in place prior to taking Sweeney offline.
But we haven't even approved Sweeney.
Right, they're anticipating that approval hopefully is coming. And, Park and Rec's eyes, that's their goal.
But when would that be brought to us for approval, Greg? Because we don't want to approve the practice field and then have the town not approve the project at Sweeney. I mean, this is kind of an odd situation.
Well, I think Parks and Rec would argue otherwise, that they need long-term, they need that field, they need additional field regardless. It just becomes a higher priority if indeed Sweeney progresses to be renovated. So they would argue that long-term, they need both. And it's moved up in importance in their eyes because of the hope of getting Sweeney redone.
If
So
I could
Sweeney,
make a suggestion, might they prioritize their thoughts and try to proceed with the burn dump as the first project, and once that gets underway, then say we'd like to do Sweeney Park because we now have capabilities to do it.
Fewer ingredients and a simpler recipe. Less eating.
Andy, did you have any thoughts?
Well, I'm kind of, I'm generally supportive of what wants to happen for Sweeney. It gets a lot of activity. I'm a little, it sounds like a late realization that there needed to be some sort of a plan for an interim field solution. What I'm sort of missing is whether, I don't know if there's been sort of this master planning kind of thinking about what the fields want to be. I think that would be important to kind of help put the burn dump, should be a different name for it, the Pine Street field as a concept that's not necessarily, just a temporary field, because it implies that, hey, we'll use it for a couple of years and then we can, let it go to weeds and never go back. I also wonder if, I know that the capping that happened on that dump was somewhat specific in terms of the type of uses that could happen on it. And I don't know if there's any adjustment to the capping that would be required that would factor into the financials.
right, so it doesn't actually have a cap per se in the normal sense of how that word is used. The contaminated soils were brought out of the wetlands and they are still there on site. And you can't dig down into that without getting special permission from DEP. You can do it, but you just need that special permission. It's likely that a new field would basically be bringing in materials and not digging down. You're allowed to have fields in non-residential uses of the property. You're prohibited to having any residential use on that property.
So no sliding into second base then, otherwise fine.
Don't slide, 10 inches down.
Thanks.
Is there any portion of the Pine Street field area wet? Or is it constrained at all by wetland issues? And I just ask because I drive by there periodically and I see purple things, and I oftentimes think of purple things as being wet things, but.
Right. So certainly the back end of that property is very wet. And also, as you're facing the property to the left, is also low and wet. So there is an area for, like I say, a smaller field that is on that higher land.
Muffin, I think you were raising your hand and you're on the Open Space and Recreation Committee. Is that
No, I am on Parks and Recreation.
okay?
So I think, and I'm speaking for myself as a member of that committee, Greg, thank you. You did a great job kind of explaining and describing where the committee is coming from. And I think, the committee looked back to the fact that the major want is Sweeney Park, and it has been for the last several years. And I think many agree that it's time to deal with Sweeney Park. And in order to do that, we need to be able to provide a space for activities to be held that are normally held at Sweeney Park, at least the back end of Sweeney Park, the grass, while Sweeney Park is under construction, a model similar to when the middle high school project began, and that one field that the school used became the construction site. Brook Street Field was created to relieve the pressure of not having a field. So from my perspective, that's where this idea has come from, to start working on the Pine Street field location in preparation and in hopes that Sweeney Park renovation rebuild becomes a reality within the next couple years. And to many people's points, where somewhat short space as it is with Sweeney existing, so that the Pine Street location felt like the logical place to create an additional space for activities. To answer the question why we didn't put in an application to the CPC was because the hope is to get the research work done and the plans done over the winter to be ready for a spring town meeting question. And CPC articles aren't acted on until the spring town meeting, so it would just push everything out yet again another potential year. So maybe that clarifies some of the questions you all might have had.
Thank you, Muffin.
Yep.
What are people's thoughts? I mean, this was kind of sprung on us. Do we need more time to think about it and talk about it and vote on it at a later meeting?
Well, I think there's, Jack Burt is the expert, but I think, and you'd have to do it in 2 days, but there is a cash balance, I believe, in the CPC fund, such that it would allow for this amount of money, or part of this amount of money. But again, I'm not as astute at those allocation rules, but you know, if you check with Jack, and I could do the same, Muffin, you might find that you can get acted upon at the town meeting, and there are existing funds, but they have to be approved.
Right.
The other thing I would say is the Brook Street thing, the big difference there is that Brook Street was always a field.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
that was easy.
So Greg, to Mark's suggestion, do you think that there's a viable chance here to create an article and have it in? Is it noontime on the 16th?
Well, that's just for petition articles. I mean, at this
Oh,
point, the board-
that's right. That's right.
So the board will be taking up the warrant on Monday night. They hope to finalize it on Monday, but
Right.
um,
Right.
you know, so that
Well,
was,
and I'm only one member of the board and not the chairman, and, you know, so I think what I will do, between Greg and I, reach back to Cheryl tomorrow and let her know about the conversation that you all have gratefully had tonight, and see what she thinks about, you know, reaching out to Jack to see if there's a way to get an article to the Board of Selectmen before Monday.
Well, but the fundamental proposal is still the same. We're just talking about where could you get it
Yeah,
funded.
the mechanism, yeah.
It'd make it more appealing, for instance,
Yeah.
to a CPC or something like that. But you're still in the same position of, you know, having to convince people that this is a good use of time and money.
Yeah.
Okay. JB, you have your hand raised. Can you state your name and address? Might be Jack Burke.
Good evening, everybody. This is Jack Burke.
Ah,
Jack Burke.
surprise.
Meeting. The CPC did not receive an application for this believing that the money was gonna be, an application was gonna be maybe given to us for the spring meeting. If you wanted to give us an application for this November 15th meeting, we are meeting on the 28th of this month. And I don't know if Greg,
It's too late. It's too
No,
late.
that's late. Yeah.
Too late.
yeah, I mean, we will not be meeting before the 28th. I guess we could have an emergency meeting before that. Today's what, Wednesday? Maybe by next Tuesday or Wednesday, we could have a meeting. Assuming we get a quorum, it's possible. But I would say that it's something we would consider if that's the way you guys wanted to go.
Okay, thanks, Jack.
Right.
So Sarah, at this point, you will just table the conversation or vote, in support or not of the existing article, or what do you think your next steps are?
Well, I think that, this is the first time we have ever heard any information on this request. I'm not sure we're prepared to vote tonight. I'm not sure we have enough information.
Yeah.
And we will be having another meeting prior to the town meeting to vote on the open warrant articles. Because we
Okay.
also don't know if the warrant's going to change.
Yep.
In the next few days. So we kind of need another meeting anyway.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, everyone.
So does the board agree that we're not ready to vote on this tonight?
Yeah, I think you put it well.
Okay. Okay. The next article is to see if the town will vote to raise or appropriate 120,000 or some other sum for harbor master vessels, purchasing a replacement boat for the harbor master. And I think fixing a boat. Can you speak to this, Greg?
Sure. So two things happening. The main thing that is happening is that the Eastern, which is the main workboat for the harbor master and his main boat that he uses for servicing and providing responses to incidents, etc. That boat has been leaking and it's been patched, and it's been determined that it's no longer feasible to keep patching it. They're not able to track the current leaks. The deck and the hull are separating. The boat was purchase used, and it's been a frontline boat for, I think, it's over 10 years, maybe 15 years. So we've gotten the useful life out of the boat. And so the bulk of that request, 110 of that 120, is for the purchase of a new Eastern and new motor for that new boat. There is an additional 10,000. If you don't approve it as part of this article, we'll be looking for a reserve fund transfer to cover some extra repair expenses that the harbor master has had this past summer, repairing motors on both this boat and the pump boat. And if a new Eastern is purchased, the motor that was repaired on the Eastern would move over to the motor on the pump boat. So these funds would come from the waterway fund. So it's being generated by the mooring fees, et cetera, that would actually pay for this. So the reason why this is proposed for you now instead of waiting until the spring annual town meeting is just the large lead time now that there are for purchasing new boats. Boating has experienced a big uptick in popularity during COVID, and there are long lead times ordering new boats.
Okay, Andy, do you have questions or comments?
Yeah, so thanks. That was good background. So it answers the question because I know we've bought, different used boats, recently. So this is one that's been in the stock for a while, or the stable. But do we have, is there a process of assessing the conditions of the boats, year over year?
Yes, so I mean,
Chris.
they're gone over annually. Crockers generally has done that evaluation. They were actually very helpful in getting some warranty work done on the motor, the Honda on it. They went to bat for us and convinced Honda, even though the motor was quite old, that it should be under warranty on some of the parts that had gone out on it. And then Brian did talk to some boat appraisers, described the boat to them, and they all said it's not even worth paying us to do a formal appraisal. We can tell you right now that what you described, we would not recommend putting more money into that boat.
But
Thank you.
I guess I'm going to tag on to what Andy asked. Was there a way to have us looked at that boat a year or two ago to know that we were going to be in this position?
I think we did, Sarah. We've talked about this for a couple of years.
Right, it's been on the
And,
list.
Those of us, and Maury is certainly an expert, but that have been, very familiar with boats. This particular boat and motor, I'm frankly, my biggest question on this is $120,000, enough to buy a high quality boat for buying. I don't know if he's stuck on an Eastern or whatever, but he'll know. But it's definitely been in the discussion, and I would be strongly supportive of this. And I think that you can figure that the Coast Guard boat that we got, remember, for the police department, we did extremely well on the basis. However, I don't know how many years it will be, Greg, but those two engines will need to be replaced, and they're about 25,000 a piece. So.
Right, yeah, eventually you're right, they will. The Eastern is particularly a good design for buying juice. It's a shallow draft boat. It enables him to get into some of the shallower areas where people tend to get into trouble. Whether it be out at Black Beach or at White Beach or Lobster Cove, to get in close. He likes the Eastern design, particularly for that. And the Eastern is a well-made craft and has a very good
Certainly
reputation.
knows, so I would trust his recommendation implicitly. So, and as a matter of fact, for the purposes of expediting this, I'd make a motion that we support this article.
Okay, let me get feedback from other people first, Mark, okay? Dean, did you have any thoughts or questions?
Just, how many boats do we have there in the harbor department? Is it just the pump boat in this Eastern that's broke that needs replacement, or are there other boats?
So there's the Eastern, there's the pump boat, and then there's what's called the safe boat, which was the one that was acquired that Mark was just alluding to. It was a used Coast Guard boat that came from the Great Lakes area, and is typically staffed by police officers for assisting Brian when that need arises.
Okay, so there's a total of 3 boats
Yes.
now, and one is out, so I would support the need for another one.
Maury?
This question is the plan here, Greg, to buy a new boat, or is it to buy a used boat if we could find it? And I'm thinking about the automobile analogy where the minute the car rolls off the lot, its value drops by a pretty good amount. Boats tend to last a long time if they're taken care of. Is this new or a used target we're looking at?
This is new that he's received a quote from Eastern. Brian always has his eyes out for a good deal on one, and if he found that, he would, and could save a few dollars, he would certainly bring that forth as an alternative. But as he scours things now, he's not finding anything. But that doesn't say something might not, something might come up between now and next spring. But as of now, he recommends that this is his best approach.
We did approve money for a houseboat last year, right? Is that still in the works, or would we be able to transfer that money?
The floating office.
Yeah,
So you would need to have voters reappropriate. Because that was a different vote. But
Is
at
he
this point,
moving?
he has not been pursuing that.
okay.
Okay, Mark, do you want to make your motion for the 120,000?
I would make a motion that we support the article as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Andy seconds. Any additional discussion?
Do we have to identify a funding source or recommended funding source? And I'm just, if Mike Pratt were here, I'm sure his hand would be shooting up in the air about reserve fund. I'm just wondering, could we reallocate what had gone to the House office boat toward this? Or does that just complicate things too much here, Greg, for where we're trying to be?
So you have to see if you could add that. I think that could be part of the motion, but I would need to just double check with council and Alan Wilson, moderator. So right now the article is written so that it could be appropriated or transferred from available funds. So the motion would identify the waterway funds as the source. I can inquire about having that the reallocation of those previous funds as well.
Could we amend the motions just to simply say to be funded in part out of a redistribution of XYZ if possible? Or something to that effect so that we can incorporate that possibility, and then you can investigate if it's possible.
Yeah, I can do that. Yes,
time.
I can, let me pursue that and see if we can have an answer for that in time for Monday's meeting with the selectmen.
I don't have my notes in front of me, but do you remember how much we approved for the House office / boat? I mean, it may be negligible too.
No, I want to say it was 50,000.
That's what I thought.
50 or 70, yeah.
Oh,
I don't have that in front of me, but
That would be worthwhile. We could look into that.
sure.
I think I have it here. That would be under the capital
50,000.
projects?
50,000.
It was under capital, yes.
Yeah.
50,000.
Okay. And that was paid from the Waterways Fund?
Yes. It was.
So our motion is to approve this article of funding 120,000 from the Waterway Fund and possibly offset by a reallocation of the 50,000 approved at the June town meeting for the floating office. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
Second,
Lori seconds. I'll take a roll call vote. And that was a friendly amendment to Mark's.
Yeah. Flexibility.
Dean,
I approve.
Mark,
Yes.
Maury,
yes,
Andy,
Yes.
and Sarah says yes. Okay. The next two warrant articles are recodification changes, zoning changes. One is renumbering the existing bylaws, and the other is, so let's do that one first. That would seem to me that that has no financial implications. So we would take no position. So I'll make a motion that the Finance Committee takes no position on Article 4 renumbering of the zoning bylaw. Do I have a second?
Second,
Dean seconds, okay. Any discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Dean,
yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Maury,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
and Sarah says yes. The next is a zoning bylaw change in Article 5, which is deleting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections because they're either outdated or have been overridden by case law. So they're deemed to be no longer appropriate. For instance, a temporary moratorium on recreational marijuana, which we passed permanent regulations. So it seems to me that that would not have any financial implications. We agree?
Yes, this is coming from the planning board. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, so
Yes.
that's their jurisdiction,
Yeah, but we have to take a position on the warrant article.
right? Okay,
And so if there's no financial implications, we can just say we take no position. Okay. So I'll make a motion that the Finance Committee takes no position on Article 5, deleting various sections from the zoning bylaw. Do I have a second? Who seconded it?
Yeah, I did, Andy.
Andy, okay. Any discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Dean,
yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Maury,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
and Sarah says yes. Okay. Then we have two citizens petitions. One is for 2 egress roads for large projects. And one is for a cap on annual building permits at 50 units.
So the first one, the egress, the 2 requirements for 2
Yep.
driveways, essentially. I mean, obviously that has financial ramifications to any project, but I don't know that it really has financial ramifications for the town.
Do other people feel the same way?
Yes.
I generally do as well. Greg, I just have a question with the earlier discussion about the Plains Newport Park and loading place. Is this potentially going to trip up anything there?
It could.
Yes.
Those sites are heavily constrained and it'd be very difficult to get a second driveway into the Plains or to Newport Park.
But they're not 500 feet from the way, so that wouldn't apply, right?
Oh, they are, aren't they?
Yeah, they're 500.
They go way back.
Building is 500 feet from Old Essex
Yeah.
Road? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they are.
So yes, Maury, that's one of the concerns by the Affordable Housing Trust.
I believe that these permits, these type of things can always be overridden with special permits and variances, but that puts more burden on the zoning board of appeals. So I think that's, I mean, it's good on paper, but if there's a special hardship, then, you know, we can always consider it that way.
Well, and this is part of the subdivision control law, folks. I was on the planning board. They are the ones that make the requirements for any subdivisions requiring either circles, traffic circles at the end. But I can offer, as you just did, Dean, so many pieces of evidence about significant areas that do not have, two ways in and out, period. Tux Point Road, hello, come on, things like that. It's just not, you do it on a per project basis as stipulated under the subdivision control laws you adopt for your town.
So there would be some projects that would not require subdivision that this could capture. So it's not just subdivisions, but I mean, Mark, you're right about subdivisions. Certainly you could capture it there, but there could be projects that would not go through subdivision review.
Well, not usually of any number though, other than that's a subdivision approval not required, meaning you have sufficient width, grade, and frontage to essentially build a house. But any kind of multifamily thing of any number is going to require subdivision or a special permit, either one, but you're going to get a look at ingress and egress.
So do we want to take no position, or do we want to say we don't support it because of the adverse impact it could have on potential development?
I think it falls under Maury's comment, which was very astute when we started, which is we can all have opinions about these things. But for this particular meeting, it's a financial consideration. And it could, it's probably going to cost more money, as Andy said, per development if you were to do this. But I'm not sure that falls within our jurisdiction.
Okay. Does everyone agree with that? That which would mean we would take no position?
I do.
I'll second.
Okay. So I make a motion that we take no position on Article 7, 2 egress roads. And what, you seconded it, Dean?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take a roll call vote. Dean?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Maury?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And Sarah says yes. The next one is capping building permits at 50 dwelling units a year.
So this is
Just
for, so I'm sorry, go ahead, Greg. You're probably going to explain what I'm going to ask.
Well, I was going to give you an update.
Okay.
So the petitioners have been working on modifying this a bit. And their current motion that they are proposing, I don't know if it's finalized, but the last version that I had seen stipulated that this would be for a 2-year period during which efforts would be undertaken to further define and understand both drinking water capacity and wastewater capacities. The reason primarily for these clarifications are an unlimited or a permanent cap on development is not legal. It'll be deemed by the AG's office unconstitutional, and it'll be thrown out. There's ample case law that supports that conclusion, and town council has written an opinion as such. But you can put temporary bans in place, that you can have complete moratoriums for a couple of years, couple 5 years. Usually 2 to 5 years is what you typically see for temporary caps. And you need to identify why you need to place this cap. You need to identify the deficiency that you're trying to address, and you need to identify a game plan for addressing that deficiency. So those are the two things that the petitioners are seeking to address in their modified motion. So as I say, they're proposing a 2-year cap and identifying the need to reactivate the Water Resources Protection Committee and analyze both potable water and wastewater treatment.
So does that mean no action for us tonight then, or?
So again, you need to decide. So it would be a 2-year cap up to that 50 units.
I guess my point is, until we see the wording, is it worth talking about it?
Or is it another thing that doesn't have financial implications on the town?
Yeah, kind of feels like that to a point, but obviously, revenue comes from that kind of growth.
When
so.
was the last time we issued more than 50 building permits? The one
I know.
maybe
I did wonder that.
1836.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's ever happened.
State regulates this, folks, We're just coming out of a moratorium, aren't we, Greg? Or limitation on connectivity to our sewer line, so.
There's a limit to connection to the sewer, yes.
Mhm.
So it's a solution without a problem.
No, I think there's certain problems that some people view, but not broad-based perhaps.
So do we want to take no position? Do we want to put a hold on this till our next meeting and we have the final wording? What would we like to do?
I would suggest we wait until the next meeting where we have final wording.
Okay,
Um,
so we won't vote on that. So that is the extent of the warrant.
So I'm sorry, just to be clear, the article wording will not change because that was a petition. What they're working on is fine tuning the actual motion.
Oh,
So we would want a copy of the motion in order to make our
Right.
vote.
Right, I just want to make that clear.
Yeah. Okay, so we're done with the warrant?
Yeah.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is discuss. the-
Sarah?
Yes,
Sarah, this is Lorraine Iavani. I'd like to make a comment for the record, if I heard correctly. I know you can't backtrack here, but since Greg is on the line, and I will clarify this with Alan Wilson, I thought I just heard that one of the warrants has to do with a complete void of language in the zoning having to do with Article 5 through 7 of zoning, and you mentioned something about
No,
marijuana.
that's not,
Did I hear that correctly?
no, it's renumbering the zoning bylaw, and it is deleting 7 sections in section 6.
In section 6, okay.
Yes.
So in section 6 in 2018, and Greg will remember this, I worked with him as well as Alan. We took a vote. The town voted, and the Board of Selectmen also offered this compromise. We're going to limit marijuana retail, whether it's recreational or medicinal, to the LCD. So that's section 6.19.6.
That's not being deleted. That's not being deleted.
Okay.
It's not being changed.
Okay, I thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
I'm watching that. I worked very hard on that with a number of other people. It was a legitimate vote, and we want to make sure that that stands. Okay,
So
thank you, Chairman.
any changes in the zoning bylaw will be on the Springtown meeting.
Okay, so that's
Okay.
not being changed in any fashion right now.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Take care. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. So now I thought we could discuss the 2023 budget priorities and process. What are your thoughts on this, Greg?
So we're gearing up. It's time already to be working on the FY23 budget. Department heads will be working on their preliminary request. The typical timeline is for them to get to me their initial request in early November. I work with them through November on fine tuning that and present a preliminary budget to both you and the selectmen in early December. And then typically you and the board get underway with weekly meetings on reviewing that preliminary budget and fine tuning it until we finalize it in early March in preparation for the April town meeting. So it's helpful at this early stage to hear from you if there are areas of particular concern or interest in terms of either new ways of providing the services or re-examining services that are currently being provided, et cetera. So it's helpful to hear from all of you if you have areas of interest and concern.
So Maury, do you have any thoughts on this?
I have 4 thoughts.
Okay.
One is that we keep going with the plan that I think, Greg, you put in place with capital exclusions, and that we try to avoid taking on debt. I think that's been a very successful program. And if we can keep on that, that would be phenomenal. Second is I think we ultimately want to watch the reserves and that they don't grow excessively and that we keep them in balance at our target at about 10%, 12%. And then the other 2 are really subsets of that. Second one is accurate cost budgeting. So we're not over budgeting costs. And then the flip side of that is the revenue side, that we're accurately forecasting revenues and we're not under forecasting revenues. Pretty simple.
Mhm. Great. Andy, do you have any?
Yeah, just I think I know we're going to be having to talk again about public safety staffing, in particular fire department, and those are, it's a serious topic. Those are big numbers. Honestly, it's an old refrain for us, but there's every chief has a different perspective, which I think is totally fair to have happen. But those different perspectives carry different sort of philosophies and different budgets, different staffing desires, and so now we have the one that's in front of us. And I'm very much a layperson when it comes to this kind of stuff, and so I wonder if there's any sort of advice that we could get from a qualified neutral third party on the topic.
What do you think of that, Greg?
Well, so to the point of bringing in a consultant to sort of do an analysis of our public safety staffing and needs. And it's something we can do.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm thinking something hopefully a little different from that study that was done a few years back that seemed not entirely helpful to me. I would almost be looking for dialogue.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can explore some options and come back to you on what
Okay,
that might look like.
yeah.
That would be great. Dean?
I had a thought on the public safety dispatch stuff. When I read the brochure that you gave, and it said any related equipment needs would be covered by the dispatch. That's only the dispatch equipment, not, we're still responsible for the fire trucks and the ambulance.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that might be a cost that we need to consider, that these things are going to be used more and have a lot more wear and tear. And that, we're essentially giving up control of these assets. So from a financial standpoint, these things will be used more. We'll have to
What
replace
things?
them sooner.
What
The-
things?
The ambulance and
No,
fire.
it's still only used for Manchester.
It is. Okay.
Yeah, it still would be just for our runs.
I see.
Your regional dispatch doesn't have anything to do with our equipment. It's
With
only,
dispatching to other towns if there's a need.
no. Each
Okay.
town has its own equipment. It's
Right.
software they cover.
Yes, okay. Thank you for
Aren't I right
clarifying.
on that, Greg?
Correct.
Other than mutual aid for fire.
Which we do
for
anyway.
Fire coverage. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Mark?
This will be a shocker, capital planning. 5-year plans that you can, that make some sense from year to year, hopefully, and that's just a discipline, I think. But I would say with all due respect that the Parks and Rec project would be kind of evidence of that, the need to think forward 2 or 3 years realistically, not just by emergently, if you will. But I would also echo Andy's thoughts of, I think it's difficult with police, fire, life safety. I mean, poor Maury, I remember when he got up and said that we're not sure that now is the time to have 2 ambulances. And you can't argue against somebody who then says, well, we can't guarantee you that the risk won't be unacceptable. What the hell does that mean? So to the extent that we could get some relativity of this is what comparable other places are doing and see if we fall within some reasonable parameters, because as we've talked about the numbers that came out of the preliminary SLB discussion relative to the fire department staffing, not even just relative to that particular development, are pretty staggering. And I don't see as they're sustainable. And I don't think any other community that I've seen believes that either. So they all deal with it maybe in a little different ways. So to the extent we could have a consultant help us see what the rest of the world is doing, what some of the alternatives are, I think that's a good thing. I mean, we're talking about with a month's notice spending $120,000 relative to a field that we may or may not get because we don't know if we're going to get the other one. It would seem to me for 100 or 120,000 bucks of a life safety, police and fire consultant, you'd get a lot of data and a lot of perspective.
Any other thoughts? Did that give you something to work with, Greg?
Yeah, any particular thoughts on your end, Sarah?
No, I guess not really. I guess the with respect to capital planning, I think it would be really nice for us to see the capital plan from each department head separately. Because I think it all gets melded in. And I think it needs to be more specific. And we haven't made any headway on review of town properties, right?
Well, we actually received a small grant from Meyer, our insurance carrier, to do a facilities report on each building.
Oh, good. Okay.
So we do have that. Nate and Chuck have developed that in consultation. So that's something that they could present as well.
Okay. I was wondering when it was going to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. In time for our budget cycle.
Yes.
Okay, because it would seem to me that would certainly play into the capital plan. And I just kind of get the feeling that stuff is just moved around from one year to the next, and it seems like the department heads need a little more discipline. And part of it is, I'm sure, to get into your overall plan, but I'm asking to see the stuff before you get to the overall plan. You know.
Right, they're preliminary requests, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in particular, I've always, it's difficult to track year over year. For example, for DPW, they're different, their plans and their requests for replacing, I don't know, a certain dump truck, a small dump truck, a big dump truck, a front end loader, a backhoe. There's so many of these things. And we kind of asked for it last year when Chuck was here, but I don't think he quite understood what we were asking for, at least what I was thinking of. And that is to really understand, in the terminology of Maury and all the work he did on the yellow trucks years ago, what our rolling stock is, for, in particular for DPW, just because they have more of it. And then, what the age of each thing is, what the,
Right. No,
it would be helpful for us to understand, how they use that stuff and therefore what their needs are, so that when they come to us and they say, yeah, we need a small dump truck, we say, yep, we totally understand that. Coming right up.
Because it seems like they would have some data on when stuff needs to be replaced.
No, we had that master schedule.
Okay.
So and what we do is we pull out, the 5 years worth of it. You want to see that whole picture.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And then, Sarah, not so much a budgetary process thing, but I thought in years past would be a very exciting use of anybody's time on a weekend day. But at some point, I thought it would be helpful for us as a committee to sort of see all of the different town assets in town, go see the water, department facility, see the pump houses, see, these different things so that we can understand and appreciate their condition and whether or not, there's some planning that ought to be happening there.
Okay.
And I guess that rolls in a little bit to that grant that Greg was talking about earlier in terms of a facility assessment.
Just have site visits like I do for CBA.
There you go.
I don't know, Greg, if you may have a plan already, sort of a maintenance plan of buildings and facilities. I know we counted up like last year that the town has something like 21 buildings. And I don't know if there's a plan that you have or a list of kind of what's needed in year 1, 2, 5 in these different places. And some may have none and others may have kind of a hit list coming along. Is that something that's been in place or not?
Well, so that's what this new facilities study enabled us to refine.
Great.
And we had a pretty rudimentary approach, but this is a much more comprehensive approach.
Good.
And Greg, is that going to include like the need for expansion space for various departments, or that's outside the scope?
Right, that this particular analysis did not. This is just
Okay.
looking at existing buildings and their current conditions and their maintenance repair needs.
Okay. Which I suppose gives you some sense of replacement versus maintenance based on what it's going to cost.
Right.
Any other thoughts on the 2023 budget by anybody? Next item is the update on town projects and grants. So Greg,
Where would you like to begin? Or should I just jump in?
just jump in. One of the things that I keep questioning is Tux Point. I kind of think we're going ahead with it, and then I hear that there's more committees still voting on things.
No, I don't, there's no more voting.
I mean, didn't planning board just have to approve something?
For the floats at Tux?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, I thought they had an application.
We had, it was for a private float.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay,
It was a residence float.
okay. Okay,
So we do have a contractor ready to go for the project. We are still waiting for one final permit to be issued from the Army Corps. It's all been applied for and they've got all their information. It's just slow in coming. Very slow in coming, actually. So the floats and the new ramp from the rotunda down to the floats is slated to be installed next spring and should be all in place by Memorial Weekend. So we went back out to bid. The new bid resulted in a proposal from a very good vendor at a price within our original budget. So that worked out to our advantage to go back out and to extend the timeline in which it was to be completed.
so what's that going to cost us now?
It's in the 800,000 range.
Okay,
Total, and the bulk of that is from the Seaport Council grant and then some CPC monies.
okay. What else is going on?
So we're still waiting to hear about the FEMA brick grant, which is for the dam and culvert on Central Street. We should hear. We are in the running. We made the semifinal list, so we're in the running for a final award. We hope to hear from them by December. So that is a $6 million project. 4.5 million would come from brick. We've received a small compared to 6 million. We've received a $500,000 grant from the state under their bridge program. And we have appropriated about 750,000 towards it. And so we're close. We may need a small appropriation to fill that final funding need. This is both for the complete rebuild of the culvert and dam, and also upstream redoing the seawalls along Sawmill Brook and taking out the water gate there. That's the gate. I'm not, the right term isn't coming to my mind, but anyways, the mechanism that controls water flow, take that out so it's free flowing to better manage floods. Because right now that constricts the flow out of Sawmill Brook, backing up water and flooding upstream. So if all comes together, assuming the funding comes together, that project would be under construction a year from now. DPW is proceeding with some drain and water line work on Tappan Street. That'll be a spring project. Funding for that was approved last year. We went out to bid and the bid came in very high. We had to scale back some of the scope of that, but we still hope to proceed with drainage and the water line work on Tappan Street. And again, that'll probably be a spring project. I mentioned the DPW facility, the garage. So preliminary look at location and some design and some initial feasibility. That is about to get underway. We'll be contracting with engineering architectural firm to help us with that work. So that is about to get underway. The compost facility, we are, it's been sort of painfully slow. Lawyers on both sides going back and forth over some final contract tweaking. That should be done. I've said this before, but it should be done in the next few weeks. The vendor Black Earth, hoping to make some modifications to what was to the design that was approved by DEP. So they'll be working with DEP for approving those modifications. And but nonetheless, they should be able to get underway with some site work this fall, and then continue right through the winter and complete it sometime in the spring. So other work, we did receive some supplemental funding to do some additional energy conservation measures at both the fire station and the library. Some additional green communities money. And so that work is about completed. So insulation and patching holes in roofs and fixing leaks and a better HVAC system for the library.
Was the bathroom involved in that, or is that apart from the bathroom?
So that did not include the bathroom. That work was funded, but we're still working on some design work on that.
It's hard to design a bathroom.
It's hard to fit it in an old building is the challenge.
Greg, do you anticipate any more funding for the memorial school? Wasn't there going to be a last round for furniture and stuff, or is that pretty much covered?
No, that's all covered. Yeah, that project is on budget. No additional funding is needed.
Okay.
So that's yeah. The memorial school is will be wrapping up in November here. The last element is the new circular drive and parking area where the old gym and cafeteria used to be. So otherwise they are fully functioning in the interior. They hope to have an open house, I believe, sometime late November, December. Trying to think of what else to.
What about all of the staffing in town hall? You've got a
So
number of positions open, don't you?
So we had Jenny Thompson's retirement as the principal assessor. We have a new assessor coming on board on the 25th of October. So that transition will be fairly smooth. And we have brought on board a special projects and grants coordinator, in part replacing Mary Riley, who retired. Sue Croft has stepped in for that role. She's starting out part-time and then will eventually ramp up to full-time to take on the added responsibilities of project coordination and taking on special projects. For example, you just mentioned this, the comps of comparable towns for public safety. So that's something that she could dive into and develop those comparisons. We have trying to work with some other resources, but they just haven't materialized. So I think it's something we just need to do ourselves. And then Sonia Nathan, my assistant, she went on to really where her true heart lies, and that's working with seniors. She moved on to a position with the Swampscott Senior Center. So that position is vacant. And we have that advertised and are collecting resumes for that now. We'll have Bob Wilworth's retirement next week. Another longstanding town employee, 30 some odd years, working in DPW, specifically at the sewer plant for most of those years. So Bob will be retiring next week, and we are promoting from within to have the head spot in the sewer plant, the main sewer plant operator position. And then we'll be advertising for a junior position at the wastewater plant.
I thought we already advance hired for his leaving.
We had, that person did not work out.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Decided that was not what he was cut out to do.
Okay.
So yes.
Okay.
So that rounds out, I believe, the staffing where we are there.
So I was going to move on to the regional school district. Maury, there was talk quite some time ago about the school district talking to Essex and kind of what their future funding capabilities were. Has anything come out of that?
There have been a few meetings this summer or fall, and I think the Essex FinCom is in a bit of a state of transition at the moment. It looked like things were pretty lined up, and then I think a few members have come and gone. So we're waiting for a little clarity on what that looks like. I've been in touch with Ben Buttrick, who is the chair of that committee, a couple of times, and he seems to be working that pretty well. Not much else happening on the school front. Greg mentioned the new school is up and running pretty nicely. One discussion that did come up, and I think it wants a little bit of just thinking down the road, is there's talk about when the Essex Elementary School project might kick into gear. And I know we had talked about that in the kind of the 2032 timeframe, but there's been talk amongst the school administration about pulling that back and starting earlier. And I think that's something that both FinComs and probably both Board of Selectmen's want to weigh in on at some point, and how that looks to the voters and overrides and things like that. So there's been just some very preliminary discussion on that, and that may warrant some discussion. And Greg, you've sat in on some of these meetings. I don't know if I've missed anything.
I think those are the highlights. I think there has been some preliminary talk about how to smooth out the bumps, I guess, or the high points of funding requests from the district, basically due to the formula in terms of, if we have an uptick in students relative to Essex, then instead of a 3% increase, we get a 4% increase, or vice versa. If Essex has an uptick relative to us, then our percent drops a bit and Essex takes a hit. And so there's interest in trying to explore ways of smoothing those bumps out. Whether that is money that the school sets aside to help smooth out those bumps, or individual communities do that. Not sure, but that's I guess that's a third area that's been kicked around a little bit without a whole lot of progress yet. Back to the Essex Elementary School, extremely advantageous if it can wait until the early 30s, because that's when the high school debt will be completely retired. So it would be nice not to have three bonds out there for three different schools at the same time. It would be nice to keep it to two. So that'll be an ongoing discussion over the next many years, I'm sure.
Greg, wasn't there part of the strategy that there would be certain improvements made to that school so that it could be extended out into that time frame?
Yes. And they're getting a little sticker shock from some of those improvements. And that, I think, is causing them to second guess that strategy.
Wait till they take a look at the building the new school strategies.
Right. Yes.
The timing of 2032 or 2030 also coincides with our OPEB, everything willing being complete too, I believe, which would be a great milestone to get behind us.
Yeah, there's three things that happened in the early 30s. One is the high school debt goes away. Our OPEB should be fully funded by then, as well as our pension should be, if not fully, very close to being fully funded.
Yep.
So those are three big numbers that can help a lot for other needs. But it is 10 plus years away.
9 to 2030.
I think these projects always take some time to think about and plan and whatever. And when the bonds actually get issued and when the voters or taxpayers have to actually cough up the dollars, there's a whole time scheme there.
Right.
But once the train starts rolling, it's rolling. So it's worth thinking about.
Okay, so we have no minutes to review. Hopefully we'll have them for next meeting. Is there anything else that people wanted to discuss that I didn't have on the agenda?
Just a heads up. We do have a personnel matter that could cost significant dollars. We're in the early stages of an investigation. And I may be calling on the reserve fund to help with that.
Is the calling on that, Greg, for like legal services that are over budget or something like that, or is it for compensation?
No, for legal services.
Okay.
We like to keep them employed.
Yes.
Okay, so let's determine when we're going to meet again. It needs to be, whoops, oh, I hit the wrong, before November 13th. What do people look like for November 3rd?
Works for me.
Yeah, I think it works for me.
I should be able to make a 7 o'clock. I'm having a crown put in that afternoon, so I might have a swollen, but we'll see.
You'll be in a good mood.
Make the meeting more interesting.
Are you okay with the 3rd, Mark?
I think so, yes.
Okay. I will let Peter and Mike know. And Greg, you'll let me know if anything else is added to the warrant. If we get
Yes.
anything in by Saturday,
Right.
maybe
Will
we
do.
didn't. Maybe we didn't want to broadcast that. If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn since we're about an hour later than we were supposed to be. Poor planning.
Tough start back into the new year.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Second.
1 second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Good to see
Thanks,
everyone.
Greg.
Nice to see
Thanks,
you.
Mike.